Most people think that the only way to fix some gaps between their teeth is with metal braces. But that takes a long time and you're going to have to wear retainers forever at the end. Today, I'm going to look at how we might be able to fix this in just 1 hour. And that's no braces, no drilling away any of your tooth, and best of all, no injections. It's something called composite bonding, and it's actually one of the biggest trends in dentistry at the moment. Mostly because it's fast, it's affordable. But is it actually good for your teeth in the long term? In this video, I want to take you through the entire process step by step, so you can see exactly what happens. And I'm going to be 100% honest about the downsides, like chipping and staining, because there's certain things that your dentist might forget to mention. So before we actually get into how this fix actually happens, I think there's a really important question that has to be answered first. And it's, why might your teeth have gaps in the first place? And generally there are 2 reasons. The first would be genetics. And it's something that's called tooth size arch length discrepancy. And essentially, if you think of a bookshelf is a certain width. And if you put books on it with each width of each book and you add them all together, and if that is less than the width of the bookshelf, then there's going to be spaces between each of the books. And it's essentially the same thing for your teeth. If the size or the width of your teeth are narrower than the total length of your jaw, then you're going to have some spaces in between the teeth. And these are actually the best candidates for composite bonding, because like with the bookshelf, there's nothing wrong with the bookshelf, there's nothing wrong with any of the books. Same here, there's nothing wrong with the teeth or the jaw. So the teeth are healthy, and we can use composite then to close up those spaces. The second reason would be because of gum disease. Now, when I say gum disease, I don't just mean some bleeding gums. This is about what's happening underneath. And if you have something called periodontal disease, then you likely have lost some bone around your teeth. And a simple analogy for this is if you put a post in the ground and there's soil all around that post, if the level of soil starts to get lower and lower and lower, eventually that post is probably going to fall over. Similar with your teeth, if you think of the bone as the soil and your tooth as the post, as you lose more and more bone, you have less support around that tooth. As time goes on, that tooth will start to drift and start to spread outwards. Same with all the other teeth around it. And when that happens, the space between each of those teeth becomes larger. So if you want to use composite bonding in that situation, it's not as good, because if you close up that gap with composite, then yes, it might look nice for a few weeks or a couple of months, but what's going to happen is eventually those teeth are going to continue to drift and move, and that gap is going to open up again. Secondly, the reason why you would have gum disease in the first place is because you might not have been cleaning your teeth very well, and that's the reason why you've lost the bone. But if we just put composite all over those teeth, they're going to be even more difficult to clean again, which is only going to result in that gum disease progressing further and further and further. And eventually what happens is that those teeth will get really wobbly and they'll fall out. The actual procedure itself is very straightforward. If you've ever had a filling done, then it's very much the same process as that. The major difference there being that with composite bonding, you're not going to have an injection, likely not going to have an injection. There's probably going to be no drilling away of your own natural tooth. The dentist may use a drill at the end, but that's mostly just to polish the tooth or shape the tooth up a little bit differently. The procedure itself starts with an acid etch on the tooth, and that's rinsed off, and then some bond is put over the tooth, and that's essentially a glue to try and help the composite stay in place. After that, it's a very repetitive process of adding more composite on and then curing it or setting it with a blue light, because the composite initially comes out, it's kind of like a paste. It's very sculptable and you can shape it around the tooth to make it look however you want, and then that blue light hardens it, it makes it set, so it's rigid, it's got all of its strength properties there and then. And that's essentially the procedure. It is rather straightforward. The other thing that you might find with some dentists is they could use something called a rubber dam, which is essentially a sheet of plastic that they will put over your tooth to isolate that tooth from the rest of your mouth. So it reduces the risk of any saliva contamination getting onto the tooth, which will make the stick, the glue, the bond weaker onto the tooth itself. Sometimes patients prefer that because there's less anxiety around, there's a lot of water in my mouth, something's going to fall to the back of my throat. That is all taken care of with the rubber dam. It can just be a little bit of a pain to put on, especially if you don't have any anesthetic on board. Okay, so and that's it, done. The composite is on, it looks great, and it's all been done in an hour. So this is the part now where I have to play the annoying dentist and I have to tell you all of the reality checks and the things that you might not necessarily think about straight off the bat with something like composite bonding. The big thing here is that composite bonding is not magic, it's a material. And like any material, it has its limitations. Porcelain veneers are like a glass material and it can be quite strong, whereas composite is more of a high-tech plastic, for want of a better analogy. One of the key differences there is that plastic material of the composite will be much better at soaking up things like coffee or red wine or other foods that have a lot of color in them, things like curries as well. They will really stick to the composite and cause them to stain and get duller. And then there's also longevity. I would expect a set of veneers to last somewhere in the region of 10 to 15 years, where some composite probably would be more likely to be lasting around 5 to 7 years. And it does require maintenance within that period, less so than what porcelain veneers would require, because they won't have to be polished. They're less likely to chip. They can still chip and they can break, but there will be less maintenance there than there would be with composite. So with all that, it's like, why do people bother choosing composite over porcelain? Well, it's cost. It's cost financially, but also cost biologically, and that is a key benefit of composite. Because you see, whenever you do porcelain veneers, you have to trim down all of the teeth and then you glue porcelain over the front of the teeth. Whereas with composite, it's an entirely additive procedure. You're not taking away any of your own natural tooth. And if after 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 years, if you do not like the look of them anymore, you can take them off and your teeth will be as they were before you did anything to them. Whereas with porcelain veneers, if you don't like them and you want to take them off, your teeth underneath are going to already essentially be damaged. So is it worth it? Well, for the right person, for the right patient, absolutely. But if you're listening to this video and you're thinking, oh, I don't know if I would like that, I probably would stay away from composite. But it is a great material, it's a great treatment option, and for the right person can be very beneficial.